I had always loved the rain, the way it cleansed everything and left the world smelling fresh and earthy. Growing up in a rainy town, I spent my childhood puddle hopping in my bright yellow raincoat, a birthday gift from my mom when I was 6. But when I moved to college, I left it behind, thinking it was too childish for an adult. Years later, after my mom passed away, I found myself back at my childhood home, sorting through memories and belongings. In the back of my old closet, I found the yellow raincoat, still in pristine condition. For some reason I couldn't bring myself to throw it out, so I took it with me. In a weird way, it felt like holding on to a piece of my mom, a piece of those rainy, innocent days. It felt comforting to keep it around. But that comfort didn't last long. It started with small things. I'd hang the raincoat in the closet, but I'd find it draped over a chair or lying on the couch when I came home. I'd figured I'd forgotten where I put it. But after a while, it began to appear in stranger places. At the foot of my bed, over the back of my desk chair, sometimes even hanging on the bathroom door. One evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I found the raincoat sprawled out on my pillow, as if someone had carefully laid it there. I was starting to get unnerved, but I brushed it off as me just being scatterbrained from stress and grief. I folded the coat and put it back in the closet, closing the door a little harder than usual as if that could keep it in place. But then the rain started. It was fall, and storms became more frequent, bringing dark clouds that rumbled ominously and rain that seemed to soak the world down to its bones. It was on one of those rainy nights that I first noticed something off. I was sitting in my living room, curled up with a book, listening to the sound of rain hammering against the windows. That's when I heard it, a faint rhythmic tap tap tap, as if someone was knocking, but not on my door. It was coming from somewhere inside the house. I froze, listening intently. The noise continued, and I realized it was coming from the hallway closet, the one where I kept my mom's old raincoat. Slowly I walked over, every instinct screaming for me to turn back. My fingers trembled as I opened the door. The raincoat hung there just as I'd left it. But there was a puddle on the floor beneath it, small but unmistakable. I knelt down to touch it, and the water was icy cold, as though it had come from outside. But there was no explanation for why it was there. The coat was dry to the touch. I shut the closet door, took a deep breath, and went back to the living room, trying to shake off the unease that had settled over me. The next few nights, the knocking continued. I'd wake up to the same tap 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 coming from the closet, each time more insistent, like it was trying to get my attention. One night I got up, opened the closet door and stared at the raincoat. It looked harmless enough, the same bright yellow from my childhood memories, but something about it felt wrong. The next day I tried to get rid of it. I shoved it into a garbage bag and took it to a donation bin across town. But when I got home, it was hanging in the hallway closet again, as if it had never left. I felt a chill go through me, and that night the knocking grew louder, the tapping more persistent. After a week of this, I was exhausted, desperate to rid myself of the raincoat. I decided to burn it. I took it to the backyard, dug a shallow pit, and threw the coat in. I watched as the flames licked up its sleeves, turning the bright yellow fabric black as it smoldered. But just as I thought it was gone for good, a strange, damp smell filled the air, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. The flames died down, and there, sitting in the ashes, was the raincoat. Untouched. I backed away, heart hammering, and ran inside. That night, I heard the knocking again, louder and more frantic. It felt like the walls themselves were shaking with it, like whatever was inside the raincoat was desperate to get out. I didn't sleep. I sat up in bed, listening as the tapping grew louder, now echoing throughout the house. It wasn't just the closet door this time. It was coming from the walls, the windows, even from under my bed. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the knocking drilled into my skull, relentless and unending. At dawn, the noise stopped and I collapsed in bed, drained. When I woke up, the house was eerily silent. I didn't dare look at the closet, didn't want to know if the raincoat was still there. But the rain was still falling outside, a heavy, endless downpour that seemed to darken the whole world. Then the phone rang. It was my neighbor, an old man who lived 2 houses down. He told me he'd seen something strange the night before, a figure standing outside my window watching. He said it looked like a child in a bright yellow raincoat. My blood ran cold as he described it. "Are you sure it was a child?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Well," he hesitated. "It was small, but its face. No, not a child. It looked older, wrong somehow. Hard to say in the rain." I thanked him and hung up, but I couldn't shake the dread that had settled over me. Whatever was attached to that raincoat wasn't a memory. It wasn't my mom or anything comforting. It was something else, something dark that had latched onto it and was now haunting me. I tried one last time to get rid of the raincoat. I took it out to the river, weighed it down with rocks, and threw it in, watching it sink beneath the surface. I felt a strange sense of relief, thinking it was finally gone. But when I got home, it was waiting for me, hanging on the back of my bedroom door, dripping wet. I screamed, throwing it to the ground, and ran out of the house, not caring where I was going. I ended up at a friend's place, rambling about the raincoat and the noises. She let me stay the night, but even in her quiet apartment, I couldn't escape the tapping. It started again, faint and rhythmic, as though it were following me. The next morning, I knew I couldn't run from it anymore. I had to face whatever it was. I went home, and for the first time I put on the raincoat. It was damp and cold, and as I slipped it on, I felt an overwhelming sadness wash over me, a grief so intense it was suffocating. I could feel it in my bones, this aching sorrow, and an image flashed in my mind. A little girl standing in the rain, waiting for someone who would never come. Suddenly I understood. The raincoat wasn't haunted by my mom or some faceless spirit. It was haunted by a memory, a life cut short, a child who had been lost in the rain, waiting for a rescue that never came. And now it wanted to be found. I walked outside in the rain, letting it soak through the fabric as I wandered the neighborhood. I could feel the weight of the spirit in the coat, feel its sadness mingling with mine. But as the rain poured down, something changed. The sorrow lifted and the knocking stopped. For the first time in weeks there was silence. When I took off the raincoat and looked down, I saw a small handprint on the sleeve, faint but unmistakable. I felt a strange peace, like the spirit had finally moved on, freed from its endless waiting. I buried the raincoat in the backyard, hoping it would finally rest. And to this day I haven't heard the tapping again. But every time it rains, I can't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting to see a figure in a yellow raincoat, standing just behind me, waiting for me to notice it again.